Welcome to another exciting episode of the Business of Digital podcast, featuring your hosts, Matt Siltala and Dave Rohr. Hey guys, excited to be here with you on another one of these Business of Digital podcasts. Thank you for joining us as always. And of course, I have my trusty co-host, Dave. How's it going, bud?
Top of the day, because I don't know what time we're recording or you're listening.
Just top of the whatever to you.
Top of the whatever.
There we go. And of course, right
Most people don't know what day it is anyway at this point. So
yeah, it's just day. I saw that meme and it like resonated with me. The one that just kind of blotched out the actual like the sun or the moon or the two. Like it's just day. It's all day now.
All day.
I like
all
that.
All day, every day.
Yes, sir. So we wanted to talk about hiring an SEO, and so. Maybe why don't you just get us kicked off for today, Dave, and we'll go from there.
We are not going to rehash what has already been talked about because we're recording this a couple weeks after everyone posted and screamed at Google about it, but we will mention it. I think it should be mentioned since it was recent. Bill Hartzer had a good blog post about hiring an SEO specialist, search engine land, why a technical SEO audit should be part of the proposal process. It's Google made a video and people were upset about it. So we're not going to rehash that because everyone's already rehashed it a couple weeks ago. But what we thought we would do is spend some time. I've hired a couple people. I've interviewed bosses that were managers and directors and junior people, and hired some developers that were trying to be SEOs and so on and so on.
Yeah.
And Matt, you've done the same.
Yes, sir.
At an agency and in-house level. So what we wanted to focus in on was if you are building your digital team in-house, or maybe, you're like me or, Matt when he was starting, and you're looking to hire that one SEO person. And I know someone that just hired like their very first intro person. We should probably talk Bobby down in Atlanta. He just hired his first staff, like full time. I think it's even.
Oh wow!
So I'm sure
good for him.
What's that?
That's awesome.
It's a big step.
It is. I remember that. I remember the feeling, and sorry if this gets us off a little bit, but I remember the feeling of going when you do something like that. When you start to expand, you go from worrying about putting food on your table and taking care of your family to putting food on your first employee's table and taking care of all his family, and it's a big step, and it's crazy like how much that weighs on your mind. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's an important thing to think about, though, and I think that's another topic we can talk about is just when is it right to hire in-house, build that team and hire a specialist for SEO and not just a generalist. And for an agency, I've seen different people with different calculations of how much revenue and how much business you have to be generating per head count, which is a completely, I think, different kind of thing to dig into. But I think we should actually talk about that. I'm making a note. We should talk about that at a later date. But I think just either building a team or hiring an SEO person, what are some of the things that you think about when you're hiring for that position? Matt, I'll let you start with one or two.
Well, I'll kind of go back to when I did, when I decided, okay, this was too much for me. I guess the things, I started off, obviously just, solo shop, but my problem was back then I would never say no. And I would always take on a project, and, if I got a really big project, I was like really excited because, it meant more money. But then I'd start working on it and I realized, okay, well, I went from working about 30 hours a week to working about 50 hours a week, and I don't want to work this many hours. And so what am I going to do here? And then another project would come up, and pretty soon it got to the point where, I was working about 2 full-time jobs, and it was way more than I wanted to work, and I was starting to go crazy. And so and I got to the point where I was like, all right, I like this, but even if I take off half of these billable hours and give to someone else to help me or hire my quote-unquote first employee. We did it a little bit different because when I got to that point, I had a couple partners that were at some transition points as well, and that's basically how Avalanche started. And so we got to the point where I was billing, about 40,000 a month, just me. And I just landed a new client that was around 12K a month, and it was going to take many hours. And so I just got to the point where I said, all right, now we're growing. This is where we're at. This is the point where we're at. And, it was time. If it didn't work out the way that it did with my partners and what we did, then I would have hired my first person. I don't think that answers your question specifically about like what are the things that I look for, but at that point, the things that I look for were someone that could help me with this load. It wasn't someone that had to necessarily at that point know everything that I knew about search engine optimization. Someone that had a good grasp on it, someone that I could teach to do certain tasks that, hey, these are things I need you to be able to do X, Y, and Z. I can teach you how to do them, but I need you to be able to do them and execute them well. And so basically it was just kind of like an extension of me, but me telling them what to do. And eventually you grow and you get past that point where you can't even be in control of all your projects, and you just have to hope that you've trained people right that continue to do things the way that you want them done, if that makes sense.
It does. I think.
Did I answer your question?
I think so.
I kind of went off a little bit there.
We're recording some podcasts today, and Matt's getting very long-winded today, so these all might be long.
Sorry.
And the dog wants to join in.
He says hello. He smells the smoker.
Yeah, you got the smoker going today. Luckily, I can't smell it. I think for me, it goes back to the question of where are you overburdened? So if you're an agency and you're too busy doing sales and you're really good at face-to-face, then you don't need your SEO person to be able to, manage the account, manage the day-to-day, manage the email, do the sales. You need someone that just does the busy work. You need someone to go in and do.
See, you said it so much better than me.
Well, it just depends. It was my topic, so I had more time to think about it.
That's what I wanted to say.
Well, yeah. Well, you got to that point, and you took a different avenue, and you just partnered with people that had those specialties.
Yeah.
And so that you could do, and that was just a different way to do it. But I think if you're an agency growing, or even in-house, it's like, it becomes a question of, okay, you have someone that's really good at data, or you have a coder, or we have a good writer. Okay, well, that person, as you grow your team, you go from generalist to specialist. And
right.
We kind of talked about that in the past. But you start moving down more of a specialist role. It's like, okay, well, now I know someone that either, lives and breathes SEO, or I live and breathe SEO. So I just need them to take off the busy work for me. And I think that really should be the first question, and before you even get to the person, because so many times I've interviewed for places, and one of them was a really, really big company in the Chicagoland area, and I won't throw them under the bus, even though I probably have in the past. Complete cluster of the interview process. The job title was a really weird one, but it was literally just down the street from my house, so I was interested. Because I wasn't gonna have to move, and it would have been like the shortest commute ever.
Right.
Because at the time I actually drove past their office to get to my other job. So I was like, oh, that's like, it would actually cut my commute by like, oh God, would it cut my commute by like 25 minutes or so, if not more. Would have been like a 10-minute commute. But I got in there and I talked to a bunch of people, and I talked to the hiring manager, and by the time I asked more questions about what are you trying to hire? Like they had no freaking idea. Like they were like, oh, we just need someone to do SEO. I'm like, well, is this someone that's going to sit in meetings at a really big company and have to argue with people and fight for, scraps or fight for projects to get done? Is this a person that's going to be sitting in a back room just doing a lot of writing and a lot of research and writing all of the stuff and working with the devs? Are they a writer, or do you need a developer? Like, what do you need? They had no idea.
No idea.
And I think that's what it is. Like, where are your pain points for your website, your campaigns, your marketing? Before you go and talk to people, if you don't know that, I don't know how you can hire the right person.
Yeah.
So, the whole questions of can you do an audit? I don't even know if that matters if you don't even know what you need. Do you need a writer? Do you need someone that can manage writers? Are you all about the content marketing? Or do you have 15 or 50 sites and you really just need someone that's like a project manager that can manage agencies and understands enough SEO to do that?
Yeah. Well, and that's kind of like my thoughts when we got beyond that part of where, us when we formed the agency and we were starting to get our first hire, so to speak, to run an quote unquote SEO division. That's the thing that we, that we had mapped out, and we're like, look, we have the systems in place to be able to create the content. We know the kind of content. We know the link building. We know, all the on page. We have the audits taken care of. But what we need you for is we need you to communicate all this with the client. Like, you need to be the face. You need to be the person that they can go to. You need to be the person that they can feel good at, because at the point we're doing all the work, but we're so busy doing all the work that we're not having as much time to communicate with the client. Of course, we all know that makes clients scared. And so if I have a person that's able to communicate, that's continuing to communicate what's being done, and you're able to help us with this, that's an area as well too. But it goes back to your point, Dave, that absolutely you need to have that part of it figured out. Like, hey, we need you to be this, account manager, so to speak. Or we also need you to work on developing any clients that come through here. We need you to develop their content strategy. Any clients that come through here, you need to be the audit person or whatever it may be. But yeah, having that defined and knowing what you need and where you need help, I think is key. And I think that's the only way that you're going to be able to hire right. So those are just some thoughts that I had on it. But
yeah, and I think that I interviewed with one company in the Chicagoland area long ago, and they were coming off of, they wanted a technical person because they'd had a content person, and they said, they were very content focused for a long time, but the ship kind of drifted away, and that person didn't really know anything about technical. And then by like 5 minutes from looking at the website, there was just glaring technical issues because they had very laser focused on content marketing, and just, off the page kind of link building stuff, which you need to do.
Well, no, you bring up a great point right there. Like, things need to evolve. Like, for example, we started this agency stuff way back in the day when, link building was like a huge focus. Obviously, links are still important, but I mean, you would do directory submissions. You would you had someone that you wanted to be a DMOZ expert a Yahoo director, you know what I mean? And so, but the thing is, if that's what our focus still was today, we'd be dead in the water. So, whereas this person's focus may have been on, directory submissions or article submissions or whatever it might be, link building, that needed to evolve and that needed to change. And I think that's kind of what you were talking about as well. And I think that's what that made me think of when you were talking about that. Like, this needs to be a progression for them.
Yeah, and in SEO, I think also a lot of the time I've interviewed people where they came from a very structured agency. I don't want to say cookie cutter, but everything was cookie cutter. They worked in the automotive space. They worked in lawyer space. They worked in a very regimented, strict cookie cutter. Like, every time a business that's a restaurant comes in, here's what we do. We put you in these 5 directories, and we do this, and we this, and like literally there's just a checklist, and that's what they would do. When you interview people, I would always try to understand what part of the SEO, what part of the strategy, what part of the past wins were directly from them and from their innovations,
right,
and their thinking versus them just executing something that was given to them.
So I have a question for you. When you're hiring an SEO, do you ask them, what's the Florida update? Or is that gone?
I don't know if it matters. I mean, just because it wiped away lots of my affiliate revenue and made me very, very sad.
Yes, it made a lot of people sad.
I knew that was a junky site. I knew it was thin and, whatever. But, yeah, that cost me a lot of money. That one did. I did not like that update.
Sorry, I brought up the painful Florida.
I know. It's too early to have a beer and pour out some beer for my lost affiliate revenue. I used to get tons of checks from art.com.
CJ.com for me.
Yep, them too. All of them. If you don't know what you're hiring and then you find a person, and aside from the cultural fit, I think it has to be if you have developers and you've always had problems speaking to developers, or if you have writers and they just don't care to listen, or maybe you don't have writers and you always have to work with outsourced writers. Can this person that you're talking to and does your job description give that off? Or does it say, you must know how to use Moz, you must be Google certified, must understand WordPress? None of that tells me anything about really what, one, the job is, and two, it doesn't help you pre-qualify the people that you might be talking to.
Well, it's something that the both of us know is some of the best SEOs that are around are people that we don't even know about it. They've never spoken at a conference. I mean, for example, there's a guy in my neighborhood that I've partnered with on some stuff. He's one of the most brilliant technical SEO people that you'll never have even heard of. He just runs his own businesses, does his own thing. And so, there's lots of that kind of stuff out there as well.
Yeah, I don't usually care if you've worked for a large company. Sorry to slam on big companies, but a lot of times you don't do SEO, you spend your days fighting for SEO.
Right.
Like, you outsource the busy work to an agency or junior people, and then you spend all day creating charts and graphs so that your $100K a month budget, or that your headcount doesn't get reduced, or so that the people in PR actually do what they need to do so that they don't tank a campaign. You spend all day just putting out fires and stuff.
Here's another angle that we can answer really quick. I know that we're pushing up time, but something I thought of because it happens a lot. Like, I'll have worked with some local clients and have them ranking really well, and you get to a point where you just don't have to do a whole lot anymore. But then, they come to you and they're like, hey, you've done everything that you should do and that we wanted you to do. Is there anything else that can be done? Should I hire someone to maintain this? What could they do? And so, that's where you have to also know how to answer that as well, because there's always something to do. But you do get to a point at certain things where you just don't have to do as much anymore. But then you could focus on the other things. Like, let's say that we're really good with ranking in the maps, but we haven't really done a really good strategy with content or with videos. And so there's other avenues, or like, let's say we haven't really done a lot or focused on social. So there's other things that absolutely can be done. So when I answer those questions, like, look, there's always stuff to do with marketing. But again, we're going to have to answer, is this video going to get us leads? Is it going to make us sales? Like, what's the purpose of it? Is this content? What's the purpose of it? Like, what's the purpose of this person that we're going to hire? Because if our goal was to just get the phone ringing from what we've done with, getting you on the maps and that optimized and that's happening, then, no, I don't see a need for it. But if it's beyond that, and if there's other stuff that you're wanting to do, then that's something that you have to think about as well.
And along those lines, episode 8, which was forever ago, we talked about, should your business hire an intern?
Oh, yeah.
And in 11, we talked about things to know about your marketing budget before you hire an agency and consultant, which I think goes to that, what you were just talking about, where, all of the stuff we've been talking, like, if you don't know what you need, how do you know who to hire? How do you know what questions to ask them?
And that's what it comes back to.
Yeah, and if you have no resources to create content, or you have no dev resources to make changes, hiring an SEO, you really need someone that can either write or do dev. And so whenever you're hiring an SEO, there's a lot of questions I think that you can ask no matter what they do, whether it's a PPC person or social media or paid social or developer, whatever it is. I think you first have to start with what are your strengths and weaknesses currently? What does your team have? What kind of resources do you have? In the past when I've interviewed, and they were like, oh, you're going to come in and you're going to manage paid and you're going to manage SEO and this and that. And I was like, okay, well, what dev resources do we have? What writers do we have? How much budget do I have for content marketing and writers? Do I have any budget? What does the pipeline look like for those developers that you say I have? Do I get one developer? Do I get a part-time developer? Can I outsource? What CMSs are we on? Because I was trying to understand, okay, if I say yes to taking this job, am I set up for success?
What roles am I saying yes to? Yeah.
Yeah, what am I saying yes to? But am I set up for success, or am I going to walk in and suddenly they go, well, you were going to have, 2 head count and 3 more in the year, but now really we only have 1 and you have no budget for anything. So go build links, go build content, and also you need to fix the site.
And also we're going to yell at you why you didn't do certain things when we have our interviews because, you're busy doing these other things.
And that's what I wanted to,
Yeah.
So as an SEO, I'm asking those questions. And if you can't answer them, why are you trying to hire me?
Yeah.
I know this is supposed to be about hiring an SEO, but I think if you don't do your internal, look at your own needs, look at your own team, and look to see where someone can help, you're just going to be wasting $40, $50, $100, $150,000, whatever that salary is, on this person, and then think that it's a failure, but actually it was you who set them up to fail.
Yeah. And we're just here for you. We're looking out for you. So
trying. Yeah.
Those
so
are
I think
those are great tips. Those are your final thoughts?
Yeah. I think my final thought is look internally at your resources, what you need, who you need, write the just job description that fits that need, and then ask questions that help you understand if someone was left alone with some budget, with resources, what would they do? How would they approach it? Do they understand how to approach it? It doesn't even matter if it's paid or CRO or social. For SEO, it's like if I left them alone, do they know how to get our site from here to there and, increase traffic, increase leads, increase sales? If not, then they might not be the person for you.
Perfect. All right, guys. Well, hopefully this gives you a little bit of insight. Also, we have some links that we've talked about and some other links that are related to this topic that we'll share, as always, on the website in the write-up. If there's any other questions that you have for Dave or I, because we have been doing this for a long time, feel free to reach out, as always. Also, anyone that has listened to this podcast, or if you're new or old and you haven't gone and given us a review on iTunes, please go do so. We'll make it easy. You just have to, give us a rating. Give us a 5-star rating. You don't even have to write anything if you don't want. So we appreciate it, guys, and thank you for your time. For Dave Rohr with Northside Metrics, I'm Matt Siltel with Avalanche Media, and we'll talk to you guys on another one of these. Bye.
Thanks all.